Have you ever worked somewhere that proudly says quality is our number one priority, yet the only person who ever seems to mention ISO is the quality manager? If that sounds familiar, then today's video is for you. Welcome back to the channel and our complete walkthrough of ISO 9001:2015. In our previous videos, we completed Clause 4, where we looked at understanding the organisation, interested parties, determining the scope of the quality management system, and taking a process approach. Now, today we're moving into Clause 5, Leadership, beginning with Clause 5.1, Leadership and Commitment. Now, I genuinely believe this is one of the most important clauses in the entire standard. Why? Because it changes who owns quality. One of the biggest misconceptions about ISO 9001 is that it's the quality manager's system. It isn't. The quality management system belongs to the organisation, and more specifically to its leadership. You can have the best procedures in the world, the best internal auditors, the best quality manager. But if leadership isn't engaged, the system will almost always become a paperwork exercise instead of a business improvement tool. That's exactly what Clause 5 is trying to prevent. As always in this series, we'll go through each sub-clause and break it down into plain English, look at some practical examples, discuss common mistakes organisations make, and finish with what an auditor is likely to be looking for. So let's get started. Clause 5.1.1, Leadership and Commitment. The opening sentence simply introduces what follows. ISO is saying that top management must demonstrate leadership and commitment to the quality management system, and it's now going to explain exactly what that looks like. So let's go through each requirement one by one. 5.1.a. In simple terms, ISO is saying that top management owns the quality management system, but that doesn't mean that directors need to write procedures or carry out internal audits. It means they're accountable for whether the system is effective. Think of it as like a football manager. The manager isn't out on the pitch making every tackle or scoring every goal. But if the team keeps losing, the manager is still accountable. It's exactly the same with ISO 9001. Imagine customer complaints are increasing. The investigation finds that training budgets have been cut, maintenance has been delayed, and inspection equipment hasn't been replaced. Those aren't quality managers' decisions. Those are leadership decisions. Common mistake. One of the biggest mistakes I see is hearing people say, speak to quality, they deal with ISO. If that's how people think, leadership has probably become detached from the quality management system. From my experience, the organisations that have the smoothest certification audits are almost always the ones where directors generally know what's happening within their quality management system. They don't know everything, but they know enough. So, what would an auditor look for? An auditor may ask, how do you know your quality management system is effective? What improvements have you personally supported? How do you monitor quality performance? They're looking for ownership, not memorised answers. 5.1.1b. ISO is telling leadership that quality shouldn't be something separate from running the business. The quality management system shouldn't sit in a folder that's only open during audits. It should influence everyday decisions, whether you're buying new equipment, recruiting staff, planning production, or reviewing customer feedback. Quality should already be part of those discussions. So a practical example, if a company invests in faster machinery but never considers how it might affect product quality, then quality hasn't really been integrated into business planning. A common mistake? Treating ISO meetings and business meetings as two completely separate things. The organisations don't really have ISO meetings. They have business meetings where quality is naturally part of the agenda. An auditor's perspective, auditors love seeing quality objectives discussed during normal meetings rather than having separate ISO meetings. That's a good sign that the system is genuinely integrated. 5.1.c. Earlier in this series, we talked about the process approach. Leadership needs to make sure people understand that their work doesn't happen in isolation. Every process has an input, and every process has an output, and every process affects somebody else. So a practical example. Sales promises a delivery date, production manufactures the product, dispatch ships it, customer services handles any issues afterwards. If one part fails, everybody feels the impact. So a common mistake is where departments working in silos instead of understanding how their decisions affect the next process. 5.1.d. This is about making sure people actually have what they need to do their jobs properly. So resources don't just mean money, they include competent people, suitable equipment, software infrastructure, time, training. A common mistake, expecting excellent quality without investing in the people or equipment needed to achieve it. 5.1.1e. Leadership should make sure everyone understands why following the quality management system matters. People are much more likely to follow a process when they understand its purpose. So a practical example, instead of saying, fill in this inspection sheet because ISO says so, explain that it helps identify trends before defective products reach customers. That's a completely different message. 5.1.1f. It's not enough to have quality management system, it has to achieve results. Leadership should regularly ask, is it working? Is it improving performance? Is it helping customers? Or is it just creating paperwork? Common mistake, confusing compliance with effectiveness. Just because you've completed every form doesn't necessarily mean your system is working. 5.1.1G. Leadership needs to encourage people to contribute. Good ideas don't only come from managers, some of the best improvements come from operators, administrators and technicians who do the job every day. From my experience, whenever employees feel comfortable suggesting improvements, continuing improvement becomes much easier. 5.1.1H. Continuing improvement shouldn't only happen because in order to found something. It should become part of everyday business. The question should always be, what can we do a little bit better tomorrow than we did today? Common mistake is only making improvements immediately before surveillance audits. 5.1.1I. Leadership should support managers throughout the organisation. Quality isn't achieved by one person, it's achieved by everyone leading their own teams effectively. Practical example, department managers should understand their own processes, monitor performance and encourage improvements within their teams. 5.1.1J. Leadership doesn't stop with directors. Senior management should encourage leadership behaviours throughout the organisation. People should feel empowered to identify problems, suggest improvements and take ownership within their own responsibilities. That's how a quality culture develops. Clause 5.1.2, customer focus. Everything we've discussed so far ultimately leads to one goal: meeting customer requirements consistently. Leadership needs to understand customer expectations, monitor customer satisfaction and identify risks before customers are affected. Customer focus isn't just responding to complaints, it's preventing complaints from happening in the first place. A practical example. If your only supplier for a critical component is struggling financially, leadership should be asking, what happens if they can't supply us next month? That's customer focus, thinking ahead. A common mistake is believing customer focus only belongs to the customer service department. Every department influences customer satisfaction in some way. So what would an auditor be looking for? An auditor may ask, how do you measure customer satisfaction? What trends are you seeing? What improvements have been made because of customer satisfaction? How does leadership stay informed about customer issues? So what should you take away from clause 5.1? Firstly, leadership owns the quality management system. Secondly, quality should be part of everyday business decisions, not something that's dusted off for an audit. And finally, the culture of an organisation will almost always reflect the behaviour of its leaders. If leadership genuinely values quality, employees usually will too. That brings us to the end of clause 5.1, leadership and commitment. I hope breaking down the clause down into plain English has helped make the intent behind the standard a little clearer. In the next episode, we'll move on to clause 5.2, quality policy, where we'll look at what makes good quality policy, why so many organisations get it wrong, and what auditors are really looking for. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe if you're following the series, and let me know in the comments. In your experience, does leadership generally drive quality in your organisation, or does it still feel like it's the quality manager's job? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.